Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. So this is a very late review of episode 6 of Watchmen. I'm sorry that it's so late. It's just the week sort of got really hectic with finishing up the Black Owned Gift Guide and getting everything ready for that. And I felt like this episode, I wanted to really sort of sit with it and mull it over for a while because a lot of things happened in this previous episode. So my apologies that this video is so late, but it was actually my least favorite episode. But I wanted to really be fair. I didn't want to just be like, oh, it's my least favorite episode, I didn't like it. I wanted to really be fair because they did show us a lot in episode 6. But turns out it's my least favorite episode. I'm going to do this in the good, the bad, and the ugly format. It's going to have actually substantially more negatives this time around than previous episodes. Let me start off by saying a lot of you guys left comments on my review of episode 5, which was all about Wade, reminding me that Wade was actually watching the American Heroes show, which is sort of like a show within a show about the sort of canon Watchmen story, and not gay porn. I totally forgot about that little show within a show. But yeah, they were doing like a scene of Hooded Justice actually hooking up with Captain Metropolis, and I will say that now, having watched episode 6, I feel like the inclusion of that scene in Wade's episode in episode 5 was a bit of foreshadowing and maybe even a bit of a red herring. I think it was included to have us wonder about Wade, just for them to give us this follow-up. Again, this is the type of writing that I appreciate, just obviously thoughtful writers, people that clearly have an idea where this story is going, and they're thinking ahead of each episode, which I appreciate. But having said that, I do think the writing in episode 5 was way better than the writing in episode 6, and this really was just my least favorite episode. I appreciate that they're doing character studies with some of these individual episodes. I feel our plot hasn't necessarily moved forward the last 2 or 3 episodes. We still aren't sure what's going on with the Doomsday Clock, the Millennium Clock that Lady True is building, but we are getting background on characters to explain why they are doing the things that they are doing in the present day in our contemporary timeline. Before we get into these last 3 episodes, 7, 8, and 9, which I assume will be very plot heavy and driving the plot forward. So I do appreciate the writers taking the time to give us full episodes that are dedicated to backstory and just really getting into what is making these characters tick. So we finally get to her grandfather's memories in this one. It is also revealed that Lady True owns the company that makes nostalgia, because apparently this woman really does own motherfucking everything. So Angela, Sister Night, she takes all the pills before she gets arrested for her role in covering up her grandfather's involvement in the chief's death. She takes all the pills kick in, and she appears in his memories as him, which happens intermittently throughout the episode. It opens at his cadet ceremony for him becoming a cop. We see him experiencing racism in the force and learn of a racist inner organization called Cyclops, and they have this head thing that they do. It's something like this. Which I appreciated seeing, that even though he has this really strong sense of morality and this really strong sense of justice that drives him to want to become a police officer, he is still subject to racism and anti-blackness at the hands of this all-white police force. There's only, I believe, one other black officer, and he gets skipped over by the white chief of police when all the cadets are receiving their badges and stuff, and he's given it by the black officer, who he says you inspired me to go into law, and the dude tells him I'm sorry to hear that, and then tells him watch out for Cyclops, which is sort of our first initial introduction to this mysterious group of racist Cyclops. A lot of this actually reminds me of Hellboy, this idea of racist groups that are working with experiments, that are working with mind control, that are working with portals into alternate dimensions and realities, and all of this shit literally in the name of racism and the system of white supremacy. The memories roll out fairly linear, but there is some intertwining and crossover. I feel like this is probably because she took all the pills at once, and each individual pill is an individual memory. So since she took them all at once, she's probably experiencing them all at once. His mother playing the piano at the silent movie theater is a recurring memory that we see sort of bleeding across throughout the episode, which I thought was a really, really nice touch. The use of black and white. Pretty much the entire episode is in black and white with tinges of color. And I thought that the use of black and white for his memories was super cool. And then the parts where Angela is waking up somewhat, or where she's sort of seeing what's happening right now, are slightly colored, just like tinged in color, and sort of the more she wakes up, the more color, and then the further she sinks down into the memories, the more they become sort of sepia, black and white. Just an extremely unique effect. There was a lot of very interesting shots, very cool techniques used, very unique shots and imagery that I feel like I have not seen before in television, so I really do commend them. The camera work and the cinematography was just excellent, excellent, excellent in this episode. You guys know I don't fuck with awards, but like they definitely do deserve something, because they were doing a lot of really interesting, unique work, especially because you could tell that they were trying to portray the racism that he's experiencing, which is horrifying, in a way that is just completely, I feel, disorienting. I think it's meant to be disorienting for Angela as she's experiencing his memories. It's meant to be disorienting for us as we're watching it, and I do think that even though the memories unfold in this like linear way, a lot of the use of camera angles, there's a lot of stuff that occurs from the point of view, like, you know, like we are the ones that are in it, which is mostly used a lot for video games, and it's not used very often in movies and television, because a lot of people complain that, you know, the point of view is like the shaky, you know, the shaky camera, the found footage, you know, that was very trendy for a while, and then it kind of went out because people felt like it was giving them headaches and it was sort of cheesy and stuff. But I really appreciated the use of it here, and I thought that it was extremely well done, to not necessarily show us imagery that we have seen before, but to try to evoke a feeling as we're watching it, you know, that we are experiencing the memories again along with her, that we are seeing what happened. I thought that they did a really great job of evoking that. Like, he tries to arrest an anti-Semite that burns down a Jewish deli. His white officers sort of like fake, you know, they fake like they arrested him. They fake this camaraderie with him, and then he sees him later on. Turns out he got released. He does this like Cyclops hand motion, and then his fellow officers ride past him, Angela's grandfather, dragging black bodies behind them, you know, that were obviously the victims of a lynching, you know, and they're just riding next to him, and they're like, come in the car with us, we're going to get a drink, you know, da 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 da, and he's like, no thank you, and then like they go by, you know, and it was just, it was shocking, but it was not torture porn. It was not gruesome. I even appreciated that there was black and white being used in that instance. You know, it was just really giving us the horror of what he was experiencing, and then it just like keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. I felt for the whole first half of the episode that she's in his memories. You know, like the police then beat him up and string him up, which is shown from the point of view perspective, and I felt like I had never seen a lynching before on screen from that perspective. That was a super risk that I do think paid off. We see them put the noose around his neck, we see them put the hood over, and then we see them, you know, string him up, and it's all from his point of view, so it's like we are experiencing it, and the emotional impact of this scene, because it turns out, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, that he is the real hooded justice, and this is an origin story. So they string him up, he's choking, they let him down, they tell him if he ever interferes with them again and what they're doing next time, they're not going to let him down, they're going to kill him, right? As he's leaving the scene where he was just pretty much lynched by his fellow officers, he comes across this white couple that are being attacked, and he just, it's almost like instinctive, he puts the black, like the burlap sack that they put over his head, he still has the noose around his neck, he puts the hood on, and he just like lets out all that rage and anger and everything that he's feeling on these people that are attacking this couple, and then they're like, oh my god, like, thank you so much, you saved us, and it's like, and then we realize that we're in an origin story, but because of what we just saw leading up to this point, of what he's been experiencing in the police force, and what he's been experiencing, you know, after Tulsa, you know, just what he's been experiencing with everything in terms of like this racial, this emotional trauma, it's really like a punch to the gut when it gets revealed that he is hooded justice. There's so much emotional payoff in this scene. It was such a very well done reveal that this is a retcon. It's a retcon. Her grandfather was the original Hooded Justice from the Minutemen. The cops dropped him after the lynching. He came across the white couple with a noose around his neck. He put the hood on and saved them, becoming Hooded Justice, accidentally becoming a superhero. And I love that it was done. The build-up and the payoff was just top-notch. There's a wonderful follow-up scene immediately after he saves the couple where she asks him why did he put the hood on before he went to go save them. This is a question that I feel like I keep pondering as the show goes on, and something that I've brought up in other reviews of my episodes. You know, like, why did you put the hood on? Why do they really wear the masks? Like, they have a need to do it for various reasons. You know, we see that Wade wears his mask because it's made out of this reflectine material that's meant to constantly protect him from psychic attacks because he was in the squid attack. And also since he was in the mirrored, sort of funhouse, when the attack happened, he has this fascination with mirrors, and there's like all this stuff behind the mask that he wears. And then we find out that there's actually all this stuff behind the mask that Hooded Justice wears, not just from the lynching that occurred, but we are also reminded that he was influenced by Bass Reeves, who was a real person, like a real Black American gunslinger in the West, a lawman, that I actually, when I was doing season 2 of Black Americans, we went through the Midwest and we went to a few Black American museums in Nebraska and in Kansas, and we actually, learned that Black Americans were literally sent out into the West to act as the law because no one else wanted to go there, right? And we went, right? That was where we could find jobs. That's where we could make some money. That's where we could, feel like we were making something of ourselves, sort of after the Civil War. So that's real. That's real. Bass Reeves was a real person, and even in the opening of Watchmen, the very first episode where we see the Tulsa Massacre, he was in the movie theater watching the Bass Reeves movie that he watches over and over and over while his mom plays the piano in the sound pit, and just feeling like, there was a lot of visual symbolism in these scenes. There were some amazing shots of her grandfather and his wife talking about the movie in silhouette while the movie itself played in the background, which was just an amazing, really well done. Like they're talking about it and we can see their shadows and the movie's playing. Just I've never seen a scene like that. Amazing scene. Basically, we learned that her grandfather really believed in justice, that he really trusted in the law. He really wanted to believe in justice. He loved this film of this like Black gunslinger Bass Reeves fighting for justice under a black hood that he then goes on to adapt. There was a lot of visual symbolism in these scenes. His wife knowing this about him, that he has this sort of lust for justice, she convinced him to basically whiteface under his mask to protect his true identity. She reminds him that white people ain't shit and that they are racist and that he has to watch his back around them. And while they're discussing it and he's putting the makeup on and he has the mirror, it's showing Regina King's reflection in the mirror, and it's like the white mask around the eyes, which is basically an inversion of her sister Night Mask, which we've seen her apply with the makeup with the black around the eyes. Just a lot of visual symbolism there. And although this is a very good retcon, for me, the believability of the plot took a turn after this scene. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the bad. So shortly after, he goes to his wife and reveals to her that he basically just accidentally became Hooded Justice, and she reminds him that white people are racist, and even, the police on his police force, his police squad that he's supposed to be fighting alongside for justice are racist, and they don't respect him because he's black. They fear him, and they want to kill him because they're racist. She's like, the only way for you to really do this is for you to disguise yourself and to never reveal your true identity, because once they find out that you're black, they're going to turn their backs on you. So he starts sort of putting this white face on around the eyes for under the hood, which also falls in line with the canon, because in the original Watchmen canon, the true identity of Hooded Justice is never ever revealed, and the only part of him that they ever show is around the eyes where you see like the white. So that's sort of how they have explained that in this retconning of the canon sort of writing. They basically wrote in an identity for him as Angela Abar's grandfather. But anyways, after that scene, Nelson Gardner, who's Captain Metropolis, comes to see them. He wants to capitalize on people that have begun crime fighting after Hooded Justice, who was the first superhero, the first vigilante, the original member of the Minutemen. Captain Metropolis wants to capitalize on crime fighting by forming a team, which is going to end up becoming the Minutemen. But we see as we're watching that it's just like the cops, that Captain Metropolis is racist, that the whole team of Minutemen are fucking racist, and that they don't want to accept him because he's black. He's very much like, you're black, like, you can't reveal yourself, like, you're, like, we're not about that life, like, we're not with it. And then, like, bam, the next scene, him and Captain Metropolis are fucking. I was like, how did we get here? Captain Metropolis comes to their house. He, like, drops some hints that he knows that he's Hooded Justice. Like, oh, I think you know Hooded Justice. If you want, you can tell him to get in contact with me because I think we're into the same things and I think we want the same things and I'm trying to put this team together. And there's some wink, wink, nudge, nudge sexual innuendo there, but, like, literally the very next scene is, like, a sex scene. It happened way too fast for me. It was not believable. And then especially considering as the episode goes on, it turns out that, like, Captain Metropolis is, like, a real racist. And the other members of the team, he's like, if they find out you're black, they will not work with you. So why would Angela's grandfather continue to be on the team? I feel like I don't know why. It wasn't explained to me why. The writing did not support this relationship. The writing did not support him being on this team. I don't know why I'm supposed to think that he would just put up with this type of blatant disrespect. And then bam, it's revealed that his wife is actually the baby that he found, which I had actually kind of forgotten about, that there was even a baby in the beginning that he, like, found wrapped up in an American flag. Is that not creepy to anyone else but me? Like, did he raise her? Did he then marry a kid that he raised? I feel like that's fucking creepy. Are we going to get more on that, or was that it? Again, there's only 3 episodes left, 7, 8, 9, so I feel like we're not going to get more on that because I really feel like these last few episodes are probably going to be very plot-driven now that we've gotten some of these character studies out of the way. But that's just a weird as fuck situation. Like, he married the baby, and then, in, like, the very next scene, she's, like, pregnant. And then it turns out that this is obviously going to be Regina King's father, who's watching him dress up to pretend to be Hooded Justice in this white face and go do motherfucking racist endorsements with the racist-ass Minutemen. And I'm just watching this shit like, okay, why is he going along with this? What is his motivation as a character for going along with this? Why am I supposed to believe that somebody that has experienced intense racial trauma and the loss of his parents at the hands of white people in the Tulsa Massacre, intense racial trauma by being the only black cadet in the fucking police force that fucking strings him up and lynches him? Like, why am I supposed to believe that he's going along with this racist-ass white man, fucking Captain Metropolis, and this racist-ass team, the Minutemen? We also find out that Cyclops is doing experiments with psychic mind control to get black people to kill each other. Hooded Justice is sent to... It's also very interesting that he's a cop. Obviously, this is meant to be sort of an ironic parallel that he's a cop that is moonlighting as a mass vigilante, a Cape Crusader. There's also a Superman, very clear Superman reference that's made in this episode of Watchmen as well. But he gets sent to this movie theater to investigate, a riot, an outbreak of violence from the motherfucking niggers of the movie theater that have all attacked each other. And he's talking to this woman who's a survivor, and she's saying, like, I heard a voice in my head, like, telling me, like, to hurt them and to kill them. And he finds out that Cyclops is, again, doing these experiments with psychic mind control. I kind of feel like we're maybe supposed to infer that Cyclops maybe led to 7K, especially because we saw in Wade's episode 5, that 7K is also experimenting around with sort of these dark experiments with portals and stuff like that. Hooded Justice ends up killing everybody, like all of Cyclops. He goes to the meat factory that the initial fucking anti-Semite that he tried to arrest is at, and they're, like, having a meeting, and he fucking kills everyone, and then he, like, burns it down, he lights it on fire. This also happens after he tries to call the racist white man Captain Metropolis for help, and he basically says, like, I'm not about that nigger business. I don't even know why you called me. I don't know why he called his ass either, because throughout the whole episode he's been nothing but a racist asshole. So, like, why am I supposed to believe they have some type of relationship? The writing is not there. The writing is not supporting it. Like, I was very disappointed. We also build up to the final scene where Regina King takes the place of her grandfather, who has clearly discovered that the chief is a member of 7K, and he uses the mind control technology, the Cyclops mind control technology, and a flashlight to get the chief to hang himself. So we finally find out exactly how that was accomplished. Okay, the ugly. I've been sitting on these thoughts all week, just ruminating, trying to see if I'm missing something. But honestly, I can't grasp this concept of him messing with Captain Metropolis. It is canon in Watchmen that Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis are gay men in a relationship. So since this is a retcon, I see why they felt like it had to be in there. But the writing did not convince me. Yet again, why would someone who lost their parents to racialized violence, somebody that has serious anger issues with white people, somebody that has serious issues with emotional racial trauma, end up fucking with a racist white man? I don't know. That's just not believable to me, and the writing didn't convince me. Huge parts of this episode were just not believable to me, and I feel like that's the risk that you always run with retcons, where you're trying to fit new information in with what is already there. Again, in the original Watchmen canon, it is never revealed, ever, who Hooded Justice really is. So this is like a fine retcon in terms of what's already there, but sometimes it feels like characters are doing things that make absolutely no sense because it has to fit into the old canon. Like in the Watchmen canon, Hooded Justice is a gay man. So I understand making her grandfather like a closeted gay man, but the writing just did not support those scenes for me. Like the route that they decided to take to introduce him being in the closet and ended up messing with Captain Metropolis. We had the very brief exchange where he came to his house and flirted with him heavy, and then boom, they're having an affair. That was too quick for me, especially because Captain Metropolis is clearly an open racist. And I feel like there's this sort of underlying idea that, I don't know. There's like a weird underlying idea. Like, Captain Metropolis is clearly using Hooded Justice to get the Minutemen poppin' and using him for like some weird mandingo sex or something, but he is actively not helping him shut down the KKK. So am I supposed to believe that her grandfather is just like blindly in love, or that he's just a fucking dumbass? Because it seemed like they were trying to go for some type of like Dumbledore, like Grindelwald relationship where like infatuation makes you put up with dumb shit and even possibly evil shit. But with that pairing, at least we knew that Dumbledore and Grindelwald, I'm in Harry Potter fandom now, we're having a crossover. At least in that pairing, we knew that Dumbledore and Grindelwald grew up together in Godric's Hollow and had a history at one point, right? Like it didn't just come right out of left field. Like it was already established that they had some kind of close relationship. The writing with this episode of Watchmen did not convince me of this affair, especially not the way that it convinced me of the relationship with his wife. I felt like the writing around the relationship with his wife was way better until we got to this midway point in the episode where things just sort of shifted and took this turn, because then his wife just sort of jumped to hating him without the writing really supporting that either. Like, we, the audience, know he's having an affair, but are we supposed to infer that she, the wife, knows? I felt like the writing wasn't strong enough for that. It came across like she was just mad that he was a fucking self-hating coon, painting his face white, getting into whiteface to continue participating as Hooded Justice with the Minutemen, who are also openly racist. And I mean, I'd be disappointed too that he was a self-hating coon, but she is the one that originally suggested that he paint his eyes white, so I did feel like, why would she then get so mad about it? I felt like they just took this turn. I felt like they set up this really amazing retcon and this really amazing story of the memories of the grandfather, and then once we find out that he's Hooded Justice, I felt like the episode took a turn where they're trying to shoehorn what they've already built up into what we already know about the character. And I just didn't like it. I didn't feel like it worked. And I really didn't like this attitude switch that they made in the wife, that I don't feel like the writing really supported that either. I felt like they gave her the Lori Grimes from Walking Dead treatment. Another crossover where they just sort of write women into a corner. Like in Walking Dead, briefly, I'll give y'all the run through. Lori fucked Shane, and then she stopped messing with him when her husband Rick came back. And then she got pregnant, and she wasn't sure who the baby daddy was. She told Shane the baby could be his, but she's raising it with Rick, and Shane just got to deal with it. She told Rick he needed to check Shane, and then when Rick and Shane motherfucking fought and Rick killed his ass, she turned on Rick. talking about Rick was the monster. That type of bait and switch is whack. And I feel like this happens a lot. This is something that happens a lot with women characters. I feel like this is also something that happens a lot with black women characters, of writing certain attitude adjustments and tics and habits, but it is not really supported by the emotional depth of the writing. I really don't like this trope of having women encouraging men to do something and then getting mad when they do it. It's some type of stereotype happening there that I don't like. We go from seeing the wife as a deeply sympathetic character trying to help him sort out his anger issues and emotional trauma around Tulsa to this sort of like shrill, like shrew character, blah, blah, blah. And the writing just didn't support that change in her behavior for me. And then being like, me and your son gonna leave and go back to Tulsa and you never gonna see him. But like, why? Is it strictly because of the white face? Because you knew that already? Is it because of the crime fighting? Because you knew that already? Is it because of the closeted relationship? Because if that's what it's because of, I would have liked to have some more writing and some more dialogue or some more something that supported that. Like, I just felt like they did not give me enough to support these actions that these characters were making. The characters were making these actions because it supported the canon. Because now this is a canon character. Now this is Hooded Justice. I enjoyed that the episode was very meta. I enjoyed that they introduced the original Watchmen canon. They started sort of dropping it in again with the Wade episode, and now we're like really full steam ahead, obviously, with introducing canon. Well, I guess you could say with the second Silk Spectre, they started sort of dropping it in, and then with Wade's episode, they ramped it up a little bit more, and now we're really full speed ahead with the original Watchmen and the storyline of the canon, and setting this up as like the quote-unquote like the real story of the canon. Like the American Hero show that they're watching is like the bullshit version, even though that's the original canon, and what we're seeing now is like the real story of the canon. Like, it's very clever. Like, it's a very clever idea. It's a very clever concept. And I don't think the episode was bad. It was still a good episode. It was just my least favorite thus far. They wrote around what was already there, which is hard as fuck to do, and I'm sure this will probably essentially become considered canon in the Watchmen universe. And again, in that sense, the episode was great. Like, overall, it was a great retcon. The first half of the episode was fucking amazing. I loved it. But then the second half, the writing was really stretching it to fit into the canon that already exists. The episode also had very fantastic shots, like I said, but it was also extremely exposition heavy. We got a lot of explaining, and there were also a lot of throwaway lines with explanations of things. Like in episode 5, Wade's episode, there's a line from his wife where she's like, I tried to convince you for 7 years that I wasn't going to run off with your clothes. Okay, so we know they were married, we know they were together for 7 years, we know that he's been that's a throwaway line. Instead of showing us, they just gave us some throwaway dialogue. I think this episode, we got some throwaway exposition about how the baby became his wife. I really hope we get some more explanation on that, but I doubt it. I also think this episode would have been way better if it had been Regina for the whole thing. Regina King, Angela Abar's sister Knight, playing her grandfather. I felt a little cheated that he was primarily playing himself throughout the whole episode. I think that there were several scenes, like if she had been in all the scenes with the wife, it would have been really interesting. I feel like it would have just been a very interesting concept to play out across the board. Wasted opportunity to have her playing the grandfather, especially after setting it up like you will experience his memories like as if you were there. They obviously set that whole thing up just so it could be her in the scene where the chief kills himself. Because, her and the chief were so close. But I kind of feel like wasted opportunity. It should have been her throughout the whole thing. A bit of a cop-out to still primarily show him. Again, there definitely hasn't been a bad episode. This episode was still very good. It just wasn't my favorite overall. I've had a lot of issues with the writing in this episode. Which is weird, because I still feel like the show is quality. It's a quality show. And even episode 6 was, top notch in terms of the filming and the camera work and some of these amazing, wonderful shots. And even again, the writing is still clever. It's a very clever retcon, but you just always have to watch stretching your characters' actions strictly so they fit into the canon. Because you will have your characters acting like who shot John, as they say. So, review episode 6 of Watchmen. So late. So sorry. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Favorite thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.